For the last time, Freddie Mercury took the stage on August 9th, 1986. His doctor had told him not to do it. And during Who Wants to Live Forever, a fan in the crowd would die. His voice was getting worse. However, what came next shocked everyone. John Deacon's angry outburst and Mercury's strange disappearance after the show were two examples. We're going to tell you what really happened at Queen's last show today. He was born on Zanzibar, a small island that was a British protectorate, on September 5th, 1946. The faith his parents followed was Zoroastrianism, which is one of the oldest in the world. They were Parsi. There were many wonderful things about Freddie's birth. He was born with 4 extra teeth, and he thought that this gave him a special vocal range that let him sing in 4 different ranges. He was exposed to African, Arab, and Indian cultures as a child, which affected his style and singing as an adult. Freddie's whole life changed when he was 17. During the 1964 Zanzibar Revolution, he and his family had to leave because it was too dangerous. A lot of people were killed, so his family ran away to England. But Freddie spent his early years in India before that. He went to a British-style boarding school in Panchgani called St. Peter's when he was only 8 years old. Freddie grew to love the school near Mumbai. It was there that he began calling himself Freddie for the first time. It's also where his love of music started. He was good at music, so his teacher told his parents to pay more for classes. This choice changed the course of my life. The Hectics were Freddie's first band. They were made up of 4 friends, and he went to school. They played rock and roll songs by well-known acts like Little Richard and Cliff Richard. Even though Freddie was only 12, he already showed that he was good at music. His other favorite singer was Lata Mangeshkar, who was from Bollywood, whose beautiful voice inspired his later acts. Even though he was young, Freddie started combining Western and Indian styles, which made Queen's music stand out. The Freddie family lived in a small house in Feltham, which is near London, when they moved to England. Freddie was set on following his dreams, even though life wasn't easy at first. So he could study art, he went to Isleworth Polytechnic in 1964 and then to Ealing Art College. Graphic design skills were learned by Freddie at Ealing, and he would later use those skills to make Queen's famous image. Freddie did different jobs to make money, like washing dishes at Heathrow Airport. Freddie met Tim Staffel at Ealing. Tim was in a band called Smile with Brian May on guitar and Roger Taylor on drums. All of them became friends with Freddie, and a lot of the time gave them ideas for show. When Tim left Smile in 1970, Freddie became their new singer. He told them to call the band Queen because it sounded big and strong. In June 1970, they played their first show as Queen at a charity event. A few people were tried out before John Deacon was hired in 1971. The band still needed a bassist. At about the same time, Freddie chose to change his last name to Mercury. He got the idea from a line in one of his songs. "Mother Mercury, look what they've done to me." Queen wasn't a big hit right away. When their first album came out in 1973, it barely made it to number 83 in the US and didn't even make it to the UK lists. Their 1974 album, Queen II, which was their second record, didn't do much better. In the UK, it only got to number 49. The band was getting angry, but their third record, Sheer Heart Attack, made everything better. It had the song Killer Queen, which got them a lot of attention. It got to number 12 in the US and number 2 in the UK. One night, while he was playing his piano, Freddie Mercury wrote Killer Queen. The words came to him first, which wasn't like him at all. Usually he starts with the music. The song told the story of a high-class prostitute. Not only the story, but also the sound made it stand out. Brian May played a great guitar solo with a 6-penny coin as a pick. They also added more sound by using different ways to make the music. The song made Queen popular, but it also made the band fight. Roger Taylor was afraid that the band's fun, light sound would make people think they weren't a serious rock band. Killer Queen almost didn't make it on the record at all. People had a lot of different ideas about whether to include it because it was taped last. Then Bohemian Rhapsody came on. When this song came out in 1975 as part of a night at the opera, it launched Queen to fame. Making it wasn't easy. It was recorded over 3 weeks. It cost £40,000 to make and had 180 different overdubs. At the time, it was the most expensive song ever made. The song wasn't like anything else. After a slow, sad beginning, there was an opera-like middle, and at the end, it was loud rock. People in charge at EMI didn't think it would work. They asked the band to cut it down for radio because they thought it was way too long. The band said no. Kenny Everett, a well-known DJ, got the song from their boss in secret. Fans loved it so much that he played it 14 times in one weekend. For 9 weeks in a row, the song was number one in the UK. Even more people liked it after Freddie Mercury died in 1991. It stayed at number one for 5 more weeks. At first, it wasn't as popular in the US. In 1976, it only got to number 9. It went up to number 2 after being used in the movie Wayne's World. After that, millions of copies were sold, and it was one of the biggest hits in UK history. Queen changed the video game for music too. It took only 4 hours and cost £4,500 to make the video for Bohemian Rhapsody. Even though it was easy, it was revolutionary. A trick called visual feedback was used to get the famous picture of the band's 4 faces arranged in the shape of a prism. It became well known, and music films became an important way to promote songs. Queen kept making memorable movies after that. The band dressed as women in I Wanna Break Free because they were fans of the British soap series Coronation Street. It was funny and brave, but MTV in the US didn't let it air. Radio Gaga, on the other hand, was one of the most expensive films of its time. £100,000. Scenes from the movie Metropolis were in it, and Queen paid $100,000 to use them. The live shows by Queen were just as good as their films. During their A Night at the Opera tour in 1975, they used a huge special lighting setup with 168 lights and 12 landing lights for planes. It was so big that it needed its own power source. It took hours to set up. At their famous Wembley shows in 1986, their lighting set had grown to include over 1,000 lights and a huge 5-ton frame in the shape of a crown. The way Freddie Mercury acted on stage changed over time too. Freddie was shy when Queen first started out, so he often hid behind his piano during shows. He used a famous mic stand that was made by mistake and didn't have the bottom half. While Freddie was performing one night, the mic stand broke. He liked the freedom it gave him, so he stuck with it. His style became more flashy over time. Inspired by Jimi Hendrix, he started painting his nails black in 1973 and wearing dramatic glam rock clothes made by Xandra. One of these was a tight costume that had to be sewn on him before every show. By the 1980s, Freddie had changed again. For a more manly look, he got a thick mustache and wore leather pants and military-style coats. The gay club scene in New York gave us the idea for this change. He was still full of playfulness. He was in drag in the I Wanna Break Free movie, but his mustache was still there, which made some people confused and caused a stir. The crazy things Freddie did on stage got worse over time. He began singing We Will Rock You while riding on the shoulders of a crew member dressed as Darth Vader during the Hot Space Tour in 1982. During a concert in Japan, he took off his outfit piece by piece as the show went on. Every show Freddie did was memorable because of his charm and daring style. In the 1980s, Freddie Mercury and Queen went through a lot of changes. With their 1981 record Hot Space, the band tried a new sound. A lot of fans didn't like when Freddie and John Deacon tried to mix disco and funk music. When Body Language came out in 1982, it caused even more trouble. The song's words and music video were too shocking for the time. MTV stopped it. Fans were upset about this, but Freddie kept trying out new musical ideas. Freddie's first record by himself, Mr. Bad Guy, came out in 1985. He worked on it in Munich for 2 years, paying close attention to every little thing. Freddie's creative side came out on the record, which was full of dance music and synthesizers. He even wrote to his cats, also Tom, Oscar, and Tiffany, and all cat lovers in the world, at the end. Don't care about anyone else. It did okay in the US, but made it to the top 10 in the UK. Still, it made Freddie feel like he could do more. In 1987, he worked on the album Barcelona with the opera singer Montserrat Cabal. The title track was a mix of opera and rock, and Freddie's singing was very strong on it. The song was the theme song for the Olympics in Barcelona in 1992. Freddie didn't live to see it played, though. At the same time, Queen was having a hard time as a group. They went on tour after Hot Space came out, but they chose to take a break at the end of 1982. The band wasn't getting along. We hated each other for a while, Brian May later said. Things got worse while they were making their album The Works in 1984. Brian was so mad that he left the studio and thought about leaving for hours in a park. Everyone was shocked when John Deacon left for Bali out of the blue and without telling anyone. When Freddie heard about it, he sang Bali High from South Pacific as a joke. There was trouble outside a band, too. Queen played in Sun City, South Africa, in 1984. During the time of apartheid, A lot of people were mad that the country had rules that were racist. The musicians' union banned the band, and the UN said bad things about them. In 1985, at a show in Rio de Janeiro, the crowd even booed them. Everyday things in Freddie's life made things even worse. Paul Printer, his manager, made a lot of trouble in the band. Brain May didn't want to say his name in interviews. He just called him the guy who looked after Fred. When Queen played at Live Aid on July 13, 1985, everything changed. Even though Freddie wasn't feeling well and was having trouble with his voice, he chose to act anyway. When they went on stage at 6:41 p.m., they put on one of the best live shows ever. They played parts of some of their biggest hits in 21 minutes, like Bohemian Rhapsody, Radio Gaga, and We Are the Champions. Freddie got everyone in the room to clap during Radio Gaga, making it an unforgettable moment. More than 1.9 billion people watched the show on TV. Elton John told them behind closed doors, "You jerks, you stole the show." Queen's business got a boost from the show, and the band got new energy. Queen began working on a new record after Live Aid. It was meant to be the music for the movie Highlander, which was about living forever. They started recording in 1985 and used brand new digital gear to make the music sound up to date. The main song, A Kind of Magic, was based on a line from the movie. However, Freddie changed the original, which made Roger Taylor angry. Brain May wrote the song, Who Wants to Live Forever, after seeing a scene from the movie. It felt big and powerful because it had an 80-piece orchestra. Queen planned their biggest and most exciting tour ever in 1986. It was different from everything else they had done before. They called it the Magic Tour. In just 8 weeks, they planned to play 26 shows in 9 European countries. The stage for the show was beautiful. It was very big, 160 feet long and wide, with 2 long paths that go out into the crowd. It was one of the biggest ever, and more than 8 miles of wires were needed to run everything. The TV screen was 20 feet tall and so big that it needed its own power source. So strong was the sound that people from miles away could hear the music. Some people even said they didn't like how loud it was in nearby towns. Walked out on stage at Knebworth Park on August 9, 1986. It was 6:41 p.m. He had no idea that it would be his last live show with Queen. It was a big crowd. There were 120,000 people at the show. As the first notes of One Vision began to play, the energy was through the roof. He wore his well-known white tank top and skinny pants. Even though he didn't look sick, he seemed sure of himself. His doctor told him that morning that his throat was sore. Fred didn't listen when he told him not to act. He wasn't going to let his fans down. One man, one goal, one purpose. His voice cracked a little as he sang, but no one seemed to notice. The band had made a backup set list behind the scenes. They were afraid that Freddie would have trouble with the harder songs, but he proved them wrong as the show went on. He wanted to put on the show that people had come to see. His voice cracked on a high note when he was under a lot of stress. He didn't stop. He asked the people in the crowd to sing with him. This added to the beauty of the moment. The band played Who Wants to Live Forever at 8:03 p.m. It made me cry more than any other part of the night. It felt like Freddie was talking about his own life because of the way the words hit him. The Bohemian Rhapsody. It arrived at 8:17 p.m. While Freddie gave it his all, it was one of the hardest songs Queen ever wrote. He even sang live parts of the soprano part that was usually played from a tape. The crowd went crazy when he hit a high note he hadn't tried in years. We Are the Champions was the last song of the night. Freddie's voice cracked again, but this time he didn't pull back. He held the note even longer. It was so loud that people in nearby towns could hear the crowd roar. The band played God Save the Queen at 8:59 p.m. They usually left the stage at this point, but Freddie stayed. He didn't move and kept his eyes closed while the music played. Freddie looked out at the crowd as the last notes faded. He bowed deeply and said, "Thank you, you lovely people. Have a nice night and dream big." It was 9:02 p.m. Behind the scenes, things were not going well for Freddie Mercury after his last live show. Something strange happened behind the scenes. The calm and quiet bassist John Deacon did something that no one had ever seen him do before. He threw his bass guitar across the dressing room 18 minutes before the show. The drum tech for Roger Taylor almost got hit by it. People were shocked. Deacon had been with the band for 15 years and had never been this mad before. Following this, he told Brian May, "I can't do this anymore, it's too much." He seemed to think that this might be the last show they do with Freddie. Deacon also got into a fight with the sound tech and told him he needed to change the bass levels. No matter how upset he looked, Deacon put on one of the best shows of his life when he walked on stage. In the crowd that night, something terrible also happened. During the song, Who Wants to Live Forever, a 23-year-old fan called Michael Jennings passed out. He was about 50 meters away from the stage. Quickly, medics got there, but they couldn't save him. The police said he was dead at 9:43 p.m. while Queen played Bohemian Rhapsody. It wasn't told to the band until after the show. Jennings had a heart problem that no one knew about. It got worse because of how exciting the show was and how many people were there, 120,000. Jennings won his ticket in a radio contest just 2 days before. Sarah, his friend who was with him, said he was having the best time of his life. He said it was the best night ever over and over. After that, he just fell. Because of this sad event, safety rules at big events will be stricter in the future. Freddie Mercury quickly left the stage after the show, which wasn't like him. Freddie always liked the parties after the show and would stay to talk with the crew. This time, though, he ran off right after the last song finished. Later, Freddie's helper, Peter Freestone, told him that his doctor had called him before the show. It had to be scary because it was about his health. He looked tired, and the show seemed to be hard on his body. Freddie even forgot to bring his silver band, which he had worn to every show since 1977. It was later found by a cleaner and given back to him. As they rode back to London, Freddie sat still and looked out the window while wiping his eyes with a towel. He looked like he was thinking a lot. Behind the scenes, Mercury felt weak for a short time. He told his personal assistant and close friend Peter Freestone in a whisper, "I don't know if I can do this." After the show, Roger Taylor also remembers a scary event. Fred was sitting alone in the locker room when he got there. Freddie told him, "Darling, I think I've given it my all." Roger thought at the time that Freddie was just tired, but now he knows that Freddie was saying goodbye. There's a drumstick from that night that Roger keeps in his workshop, so they can remember their last show. John Deacon, who is no longer famous, said it was the hardest act of his life. During These Are the Days of Our Lives, he said he cried because he thought it might be the last time they would play together. That night felt like the end of an era for everyone in the band. Freddie Mercury had a lot of close friends, family, and surprises in his life. Mary Austin was a very important person in his life. Things about our relationship from talks he gave, mostly for David Wick. In 1969, when Freddie was 24 and Mary was 19, they met. They fell in love right away, moved in together, and even chose to get married. But Freddie told Mary in 1976 that he was gay and straight. "Not really, Freddie. I believe you are gay." They became close friends after this event, but their friendship changed. Freddie always said that Mary was his only real friend and that no one else could be like her. Even after they broke up, Freddie still cared about Mary. In 1980, he bought her a flat in Kensington that was close to his own home. In his will, he gave her half of his money, which included his house. As his health got worse, Mary stayed by his side. After he died, she kept the secret of where his ashes were spread, just like Freddie had asked. Freddie was also seeing other people. There was a stylist named Jim Hutton who he met in 1985. They were together until Freddie died in 1991. But things were not easy for Freddie. A woman from Austria named Barbara Valentine was also close to him, and they did spend time together sometimes. Freddie had a lot of relationships at the same time, which showed how difficult his personal life was. Freddie had problems his whole life with his sexuality and how people saw him. He was born in 1946, a time when being gay was often against the law. He had to hide the fact that he liked guys from a young age. He would joke or say something unclear about his sexuality when people asked, like as gay as a daffodil. He did it to avoid telling the truth while still having fun. Freddie was more than just a singer. He was an artist. The things he loved most about college were drawing and art and design. He bought rare and beautiful things over the years, like Japanese woodblock prints and works by Picasso and Dali. Besides that, he loved collecting old glass, and even had paintings made of his cats. His collections filled up his house and showed how much he liked pretty things. For many years, Freddie Mercury didn't tell anyone about his fight with AIDS. Not even most of his close friends or the press knew. He found out he had HIV in April 1987, but some of the signs showed up as early as 1982. He saw a doctor about a sore on his tongue while he was in New York that year. It could have been an early sign of the sickness. Mercury still rejected all the health rumors, even with this. He couldn't relax because of the press. Since 1986, British newspapers like The Sun have been writing about Mercury's health. Most likely, these stories and the fear and shame that came with having AIDS at the time made him keep quiet. The band never talked about it, not even in Queen. May, the guitarist, said they didn't ask Mercury any questions because he didn't want them to. A small group of people close to him knew the truth. Afterward, Mercury's helper Peter Freestone said that he had always thought about the fact that many of his friends had died from AIDS. First he talked to his cats, then he would friends, and he was going to call them. Mercury was afraid for himself and the people who were close to him. A formal statement was made by him the day before he died. He talked about why he didn't tell anyone. All those years. Over time, Mercury looked smaller and weaker, which made people guess. He finally told everyone he had AIDS on November 23, 1991. He died the next day. This put an end to years of silence and guesswork. He never stopped making music, not even when he was very sick. Queen made the album Innuendo in 1990. In order to help him, the band changed their plans. They worked for 3 weeks and then came back to rest for 2 weeks. The band already knew how bad his condition was. Brian May said that doctors told them Mercury didn't have much time left, but Mercury worked hard to keep going. The song "The Show Must Go On" became a sign of how determined he was. May wasn't sure if Mercury could handle the difficult singing. He took a shot of vodka and told her, "I'll fucking do it, darling." After that, he gave a perfect performance in just one take. Mercury kept recording after he finished Innuendo. He worked on songs like Mother Love in May 1991, but he couldn't finish them. The last time he recorded was on May 22, 1991. He taped a story about winter that was on the album Made in Heaven, which came out after his death. Mercury worked hard to leave behind music that would last forever, even though he knew he was dying. The last time Freddie Mercury was seen in public was at the Brit Awards on February 18, 1990. Queen won an award for her important contributions to British music. Fans were shocked to see that Mercury looked very thin and tired. He still went to honor his band and friends. Brian May spoke most of the time on stage. He did come to see us play. There was a small group called Smile, and Freddie came to watch. He was so excited and full of energy. Mercury only said thank you and good night. These were his last words in public, a simple but touching goodbye. Mercury's health quickly got worse in the last few months of his life. By June 1991, he spent most of his time at home in Kensington, West London. Friends and Mary Austin, his ex-partner, often came to see him to support him. It took a long time for me to love this man deeply. Things got worse for him. He lost his sight and spent a lot of time in bed. He stopped taking all of his medicines, except for painkillers, on November 22, 1991. On the same day, he worked with Queen's manager Jim Beach to write a formal statement. The message came out on November 23 and confirmed that he had AIDS. His death was on November 24, 1991, and he was 45 years old. The person died of pneumonia that was caused by AIDS. Jim Hutton, who was with him, said that his last moments were peaceful and that Mercury looked calm and happy before he died. People loved Mercury's songs even more after he died. Queen's last songs were put on the album Made in Heaven, which came out in 1995. Over 20 million copies were sold around the world. Mercury left behind a lasting impact. A lot of people have streamed his music, and Queen's Greatest Hits is the best-selling album in UK history. His voice and zeal will always be remembered, getting people all over the world excited.